Hey everybody, I want to bring this message forward because there's a lot of people that are very confused right now. So I'm going to give you some facts about the paradigm that we live in. There's a couple of them, and these are all facts. These can be proven. People are very concerned about the cops and judicial corruption. So let me explain to you, first off, that your judiciary has been couped. It was couped a long time ago. It was couped by the European Bar Association in the 1800s when the 13th Amendment, the original 13th Amendment, the Tone Amendment, the Titles of Nobility Amendment, was hidden after it was lawfully ratified in 1807, of which I can personally prove. I own the books. I own the Virginia books of the legislature where they affirm by second witness that the 13th Amendment was lawfully ratified, the original one. There's a second 13th Amendment, and then the third 13th Amendment, which is what most people know, is the one that we all think of, but there's actually two before that. But the first one was important in that it removed the capacity of the foreign coup of the European bar from, and other titles of nobility, anybody who gets a state licensure, roughly, but it prevented the attorneys of the law, people who twist it. It deprived them of the capacity to bring forth claims in law because they were corrupting in law and trying to change the organic, natural law instruments of our nation and country and the republic. So in 1809, the attorneys that were infiltrates and there to usurp the sovereign will of the people were made by a third affirmation because titles of nobility are forbidden, and emoluments, getting emoluments, favors from foreign nations, how about lunch from a lobby, any of that stuff. Those are against the law pursuant to the Constitution. And when you do such things, it's considered an act of sedition because your loyalties lie elsewhere whenever you're getting paid by a foreign power. And there aren't very many people in our government right now that don't get paid by a foreign power. I think we all know that. They're called lobbyists and corporations and bankers. There's very few people, in my opinion, within the government that are doing their job. A lot of them are probably afraid to do their job for fear they'll get shot. Or they're actually flat out told they'll get shot. That's how deep this coup is that's been running for 200 years. So the bar couped the Constitution and hid some very important things from you from the 1800s. Then came the Civil War. The Civil War was never concluded. It was laid in an armistice by the North and Southern generals. It was never resolved. We're still in the Civil War. We're still at war under martial law. That was enacted by Lincoln, the traitor that he was. He had no power to do what he did. And mind you, the Civil War was enacted after the federal government statutized the capacity of the states to define peonage and slavery. After they statutized it, I believe it was around the same time, they actually convened in a joint session of Congress and passed the second 13th Amendment, which basically says that the states have the unbridled right and can't be interfered with by the federal construct of the law, that they get to define peonage and slavery and those who owe money to the states. Now, that is unconstitutional. Very much so. They are sovereign nations, but they're all bound by an overseeing government. 20 days after they unanimously agreed to such things, they then declared the Civil War. Now, how can you have a government that agrees in unanimity? It was a unanimous vote. How can a government unanimously vote in Congress? I don't think it was a Congress. I think it was the Congress, which is a corporate instrument at that time. How can they vote that states have the right to define peonage and slavery unanimously in the federal legislature and then 20 days later say that suddenly there's this magical line between the South and the North where the South are going to vote for slavery and peonage rights of the states and the North are going to say no? So see, what they've done is they've set up the American people to fight a war amongst ourselves. And after we had one of the bloodiest battles ever seen in the history of the world that we know of, the Civil War, the generals got together and decided that war was not going to fix it. and they created an armistice. Thereby, we had the option to either restore the republic or reform the republic. Well, Lincoln wanted to restore it, and that's why he got shot, because the bankers, the coup, wanted it reformed. And the way that they reformed it was to set aside your unalienable rights. They think that they have the right to do that, and give you civil rights. Rights that you have to go ask their corrupt coup state to exercise. Well, I'm going to tell you that they don't have that authority. That's an expansion of the grant of the law, not an extension. And it's against the law for the Congress or the state to expand the grant of the law of the will of the people. So everything that happened during the Civil War was unlawful. You can't suspend the Constitution. The government doesn't have the grant. The day that happened, they became de facto, meaning operating outside of the will of the people with a grant of law. Your government has never returned to the grant of law. It has been operating in bankruptcy under the Bankruptcy Act of 1879, where they used police powers to haul you in to create forced bankruptcies. Go read it. It says that in it. And when they do that, they make you pay a small fee. And then they take the rest of it and create bonds. Your whole government is a bond criminal racketeering scheme to effect bankruptcies, to steal your land, your rights, and your children. Everything that you are, eventually your soul. That's what they want. So all those people who think conspiracy theorists are nuts, some of them are, some of them are not. When they tell you that your government is a foreign corporation, it is. That's in the statutes. That's in the federal statutes. It is a foreign federal corporation run by not the people of this country. Your states were bankrupted when Nixon announced that there wasn't enough gold in Fort Knox to cover the value of the fiat dollar bill, which it was after that, because it was no longer gold-backed. When he announced that, they bankrupted the states. And in the state that I'm dwelling in right now, trying to fight them, they actually unlawfully amended their constitution with a statutory overlay, whereby they said to the people, we need to modernize our constitution. We need to modernize it. So give us the authority to modernize it. And in modernize it, we need to abolish the whole judicial act of the Constitution of the state of Ohio. Well, guess what? When they did that, they came back a little bit later and didn't ask the people to affirm their changes, where they had added a little bit here and there, little powers for the judiciary to come in with the extra constitutional invention of police powers, the private army of the cooing bar associations and unions, to come and get you and bankrupt you. So, when you feel like you're being robbed when they stop you for a ticket, you are. It's piracy by law. It's called prize law. It's under Admiralty and Maritime. How are police operating in a water-based form of law? You know why? Because they can't get to the real law side, the law of equity and the law, common law on the land, because they are barred from it by the 13th Amendment. So they're running around executing the law of piracy, prize law, vice admiralty upon all the people with their ship cruisers on the high waves. So, when people say we need to get rid of the police powers, they're right, because police powers are extra constitutional. By the admission of the cooing bar itself, they tell you, because they have to tell you the law, otherwise it's outright fraud. But they're still fraud, because you're being engaged in unlawful, ultra-virus contracts that you don't even know you're engaged in, by signing your driver's license, by allowing your child to have a certificate of live birth, a bill of lading, where they then value the vessel of your child's soul and they think they own it. That's right. The state believes that it owns the body of your child, not the soul. They got to get that. They got to indoctrinate you. They got to propagandize you and educate you. And when that doesn't work, they want to fill you with drugs and poisons and pharmacological stuff that we don't need. God provides all. We don't need that stuff. We don't need dirty little, ugly little demonic, devil-worshipping fingers putting things into your children that make their mind go cuckoo. You know, I think they call that immunizations now. So you all people need to understand the paradigm, because here's what has to happen, because your founding fathers and mothers were quite enlightened, and they come from all different forms of religion, and they created an organic document that governs the law of the land, all land. And guess what? Eventually, water has to flow on land. There's not any water that doesn't have land underneath it. There isn't any water that doesn't fall upon the land eventually, even the vapor. So the law of the land is under everything they do. Well, guess what the law of the land is? The Constitution for States of America United. Not the Constitution of the United States, because the United States, again, is a federal corporation that doesn't operate in law, it operates at law. Now, federal statutes say that the COOD government is still supposed to be in compliance with the law, but they're not doing that anymore. I think everyone has noticed that your federal government is openly rogue. Rogue! They've told you. They're all telling you. But you can also tell for the fact that they're not doing anything about it, that they're not taking orders from the people. They're taking orders from foreign traitors, seditions, people trying to create a racial insurrection so they can come in just like the Civil War and take everything like carpetbaggers and steal everything you have if they don't kill you. So all these race baiters and people want it to be about black and white, it's not. It's about slaves and the masters. It's that simple. Whites are slaves, blacks are slaves, everybody's a slave. Even your government are slaves. Everyone in your government is a slave to foreign powers. Even if you are a righteous person in the government, I bet you find out. If you're a good cop and you're like, hey, you shouldn't do that, they're like, shut up. If you're a good judge, you're like, hey, I'm not supposed to do that, they're like, shut up. If you're a good attorney who believe in the Constitution, there are attorneys that have had to move out of this country because they attack their family when they can't get them to be quiet. Your country is cooed and you don't understand because all you do is eat sports and the news that's propaganda. It's 1984. Have a shot of vodka while you're at it. The only thing that's saving us is alternative media and people doing the right thing. And I'm going to get to that now. Because cops are not sheriffs. And sheriffs who put themselves with cops need to pull that out of their mind. That's miseducation. Okay? Cops are not sheriffs. Cops, their chief, is appointed by the corrupt state. And their job is to protect commerce, because that's what happened in the Civil War when they had an armistice. They said, well, let's protect commerce. Read the Lieber Code. It's for the protection of commerce, because the bankers need to make money, and they need to get you to pay their tithe in their corporate federal taxation, which doesn't come back to us. That goes out of the country. Go read the stuff when they told you 2 or 3 years ago, when the senator said outright, well, taxes are a voluntary. Yes, they are voluntary, because you have to willfully be part, quote, of their corporate paradigm. Now that we're starting to understand that, hey, the one right we still had pursuant to the 14th Amendment is the right to contract, and the Constitution itself. We always preserve the right to contract. They couldn't deny us that. It's in the greater body of the Constitution that developed the whole concept of the government structure. So we still have the right to contract. And we, being that our governments are corporations, don't have to have them as our government if we choose not to contract with them. But now, mothers are kept in hospitals until they sign a birth certificate. Or in Ohio, they don't even need a mother's signature to create a birth certificate. So it's outright fraud. It's outright fraud to create a bill of lading without the maker giving you and conveying the right to value that. Because a child is like a piece of art. A child's body is formed within the mother from the land. It is God's will that that child be made by that mother, for that community, and for that family. Why do you think they like to steal them with fraudulent civil claims? The CPS workers. Those are civil forfeitures. When they steal your children, those are unlawful civil forfeitures. They're actually auxiliary maritime claims, which by the law of even admiralty have to be compelled and followed by the common law. Meaning, even though they're bringing admiralty, maritime auxiliary claims of civil forfeiture upon your children, they still, if you knew the law and told them the law, have to bring forth the claim in their standing and proved jurisdiction by the tenets of the common law. Do you see the common law anywhere? I see it. I see it in the people when they're upset. But they're not exercising their instruments of law. So back to cops. Cops are appointed. They aren't elected. Sheriffs are elected officials. They are supposed to be elected by the county in an open election by ballot, not poll. Ballots are lawful. Polls are not. They're polling you and saying, hey, who would you like to have as president? But they've already picked the president because, see, you didn't actually do a ballot. And if you don't do a ballot, that's not a real vote in a republic. So they've, again, miseducated to make you believe that when you go check that little electronic thing that it's a vote. It's not a vote. A vote is by your hand, which has the power of God, in a piece of paper. And those pieces of paper are read by real eyes. And they count them. And then they put, under penalty of perjury, we have, by the laws of the republic, that we have counted this many votes and this person did win. That doesn't happen anymore. They've obfuscated that too. So your sheriff is supposed to be elected by a lawful ballot election. Now you know that cops are appointed and sheriffs are elected. Cops are corporate, sheriffs are the law. Cops are legal, sheriffs are the law. And what is legal is not always lawful. But if you don't know the difference and you don't exercise belligerence, if you're not a belligerent, a wager of war, and if you don't, if you're not belligerent about your rights, because if you don't exercise their rights, you lose them. So when a cop comes and tells you, give me your guns, and you go, well, here's my gun. Guess what? You just surrendered the right that God gave you by your free will, because you don't know that guy that just did that to you. It's not the law. But he's a law enforcement officer. Whose law? What God? Whose law? Not our law. Banker's law. Sheriffs are supposed to be elected. And underneath that sheriff, because you're like, well, sheriffs can't just fix it. No, they can't. But there's a thing called the militia. Militias are constitutional. Any other army, including cops of the judiciary, so cops are the army of the judiciary, there's no grant in the Constitution for the judicial branch to have its own army to come get you by gunpoint and shoot you when you don't agree, or shoot you when you become a parolee, which is a military term, when you've agreed to not be a belligerent anymore. If you've ever been a parolee and you are belligerent again, okay, they can shoot you dead, and the Lieber Code, they don't have to even have a hearing. You're a belligerent. That violated the contract of not being a belligerent anymore when you took parole. So, again, might want to go read the Lieber Code. So, judiciary has an army. They're not supposed to have an army. That's your cops. The executive branch is controlled by attorneys. There's hardly any of them in there. Heck, your president is a disbarred one. That tells you he must be pretty bad if his own corrupt group disbarred him. You have a president who the cooing force of the country disbarred your guy. I wonder who supported him. Because certainly the bar didn't. Not Chicago. They didn't want him to have a license to practice law, which that doesn't exist, by the way. You can't license the practice of law. You're given law in your heart when you're born. It's called a nomenon. Your creator told you what was right and wrong. So, cops are the army of the judiciary. Sheriffs have an army in the militias. Militias are the only army other than the Navy, okay, on the sea. Get it? Federal, get the Navy, Admiralty, maritime jurisdictions on the sea. Those are the only constitutional groups of militarized people allowed under the Constitution. So if you're in the National Guard, that's a little question whether that's actually a militia, an organized militia. But see, the National Guard were federalized under Bush, remember? So he took the militias, that organized militia, away from the states. Unlawfully, I might add, because he didn't have the authority to take the organized militia of the states and put them on foreign land. That's not what they're for. if the military, the federal military of any kind, including cops, I don't care what you call them, walk on this land, it's posse comitatus. That's against the law too. The big law, not the little statutes. The law that formed this country, the law that gave your governance the right to call itself the governance. So the only people who are supposed to be affecting law enforcement on this land in the counties is the organized militia under the direction of the governor. Okay? And they have to be declared the organized militia. Okay? And the disorganized militia and the organized militias in the counties that are controlled by two instruments. The Shire of the Reef, the sheriff, which we brought from England with us, that station, and the fourth branch of government, the people, the republic, as they affect the power of the law, not in law, not at law, in law. The people operate in law under de jure grand juries, meaning de jure lawful common law grand juries. And guess what? In order to get a lawful one of those, you have to elect them as well by proper ballot. The same way the sheriff is formed. Now, there are some laws of necessity that allow us to form grand juries if remedy and relief in the law are being denied by our overseeing corrupt government. And they've pretty much been declared that in a variety of lawsuits that have been brought forth by your very people that are fighting hard for everybody because they know what's going on. You know, the ones that you think are crazy, they've been fighting the law 15, 20 years. In the last 5 years, it's gotten pretty heavy. And that's why you see all this crazy stuff happening, because we can prove that the states are operating outside of the Constitution. We can prove that your federal government was laid vacant and was couped in 1809, and you've just had a slow death because you all have been allowing your rights to be eroded by your own free will, because they can't take it from you. Well, they can now. They're going to come at you. They think they've got it. They think they've got it in the bag. They think all the cops are bad. They think all the cops don't know that there's right and wrong. They think all the judges don't know what's right and wrong. They think everyone who works for the state is going to go with them. Well, I'm going to tell you, they're not. Because not every cop is bad. Not every sheriff is bad. Not every judge is bad. Not every doctor is bad. Not every common citizen or man or woman that doesn't even classify. Not every immigrant is bad. Because, see, here's what our founding fathers and mothers knew. We are born with the concepts of right and wrong within us. It's the state, much like the French revolutionary philosopher said, the state is there to miseducate you, to take you from your righteousness. That's what the states have been about, since, I don't know, the Magna Carta. So their job is to bring you from what you know to be right and wrong, to indoctrinate you and propagandize you and lie to you and defraud you and make you believe stuff that you look at it and go, well, that doesn't seem right. How could that be right? It's not. If it feels like it's wrong in your heart, it's wrong. That's God. That's your Creator talking to you. I don't care what you want to call it. He could be a white man with a beard. I don't care what he is. He could be a dark-skinned man with a black and a turban. I don't care. He's your Creator. He, she, it. Your Creator. You are born in balance. Our founding fathers knew that. In the preamble to the Constitution for the states of America united, it says we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable, not inalienable, unalienable rights that can't be taken from you except by your free will. And they enumerated them in that Constitution. And I'm going to tell you, read the Constitution. It has no boundaries. The Constitution applies to every bit of land in this world if people want to follow it. There's only 3 laws in the Constitution for a person to walk righteously in life. Do no harm to others. Golden rule. Do unto others you would have them do unto you. Do no harm. Don't violate the public peace. Don't violate the public trust. How many people that wear uniforms of state and in the public are running around doing all 3 of those things? They're hurting people, they're violating the public trust, and violating the public peace. Well, I mean, you got Hillary Clinton, it looks like she's violated all 3. You got Obama, he's violated all 3. You got your DOD department, you got the head of the FBI. By him not doing his job, he violated the public trust. That's a law. That's a violation of the common law. And when you do those things, and you know that you're not supposed to do them, because see, they're supposed to be learned in the law, right? These attorneys are supposed to be learned in the law. So when an attorney actually, who's supposed to be claims that he's learned in the law, and wears that Pharisee's robe, yeah, that's right, a Pharisee's robe in the temple courts with little pews in them, when that guy breaks the law on that bench, that's considered an act of treason if he violates your substantial rights. Because anybody who works in concert, constructively, well, you don't have to do it in concert. If you do it in concert, it's high treason. That's punishable by death. If you just do it alone, very few people do it alone except for that lone cop on the dark street in the middle of the country and he shoots the guy for no reason. That's a single act of treason because he denied that man's substantial rights. The right to be free of oppression and tyranny is a substantial right. The right to due process is a substantial right. The right to bear arms is a substantial right. These are not to be infringed in any way, shape, or form. They are unalienable. To alien them is an expansion of the grant. That is against the law too. So when they expanded their grants, those were acts of sedition and treason. When two or more people work in concert to undermine the laws of the United States, the corporate, or the United States of America, the republic, it is an act of treason, punishable by death. That doesn't mean you get to go shoot them because you just feel like it, because you're mad, because you don't know the law. You don't know any other way to get remedy or relief. The only way to get remedy relief for acts of treason is the law. So, a couple things. All those black leaders in the Black Lives Matter movement, first off, change it to All Lives Matter and you'll get more votes. But I understand your point. Don't be infiltrated, which all actions usually are. All parties, every organization gets infiltrated by bad people. So you need to make it All Lives Matter. But whenever they call for the abolishing of the police powers, see, they need to say police powers, not police. Excuse me. They need to say police powers. They need to abolish police powers because they're extra constitutional. That's another word for not constitutional because they're not elected. They're appointed by the corrupt judges and state and senators, all that stuff. So they need to be abolished. Now, if those cops are good guys, they can go be sheriffs. And they can still do it. It's not that hard. Just make the cops sheriffs. But here's the deal. If you become a sheriff from now on and you violate the Constitution, then we need to have grand jury and a militia that will string you up. Because if you operate outside the Constitution and you, as an agent of a state, of an authority, wearing this garb of I am your governance, because you all are a little crazy and you're not always behaving yourself, if you go around thinking that and you think that you're going to violate the law to affect the law, that's not in law. That's not in law. That's stuff from Nazi Germany, because that's where we're at. Because if you have one union running all your branches of government, that's fascism, folks. That's not communism. That's not socialism. That's not corporatism or capitalism. It's flat out, balls out fascism. You currently live in a fascist state. We are on a precipice where if you all don't start listening to your heart and learning the law that your God gave you. And if you don't believe in God, I can't help you there because you didn't make the clouds and you didn't make the trees. Something did. So there's clearly a higher power or order than what we have control over. And that's the one that gave you the same nomenon and balance with your world and society that he gave the birds and the bees and the alligators and the wind and the trees and all that stuff. It's only the malfeasance and the introduction of the impure man and woman who don't listen to what the sense that God gave them. So now we're going to talk about de jure versus de facto, because I've taught you about cops and I've talked to you about sheriffs. You know the distinction now. One's law, sheriffs are law, cops are legal. One's constitutional, the sheriff. One is a fiction of bankers. And the judiciary, that's cooed. Okay, so you know that now. Now let's learn about de jure versus de facto and where we're at. Because see, the only difference between de jure and de facto is what the man or the woman wearing the uniform or sitting in the seat of government. There's a seat of government. Like there's the Pope, the man. He has a name. Most people don't know his name. but he only sits in the seat, the Holy See of Rome. The see. It's an instrument of state. If you are sitting in an instrument of state as a doctor who's giving people immunizations that you even have any perception are killing children or retarding them or doing anything evil to them, you're a criminal. You don't get to sit there in your seat as a doctor, a judge, anybody who works for the state. Licensed social worker, I don't care what you, if you have a licensure from the state, first off, you're a foreign agent by the law, by the lawful, organic instrument, the Constitution for the States of America United. If you have a licensure, you have given up your right to be a citizen, a state citizen of the Republic. You're not told that, but that's the law. So when you do that, though, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to just do whatever because the guy above you tells you so. They themselves, the statutory judiciary that's in coup, tells you ignorance of the law is no excuse. Really? Well, good to know that, Judge, because you just committed a federal felony. When you pled for me, that's against the law. Practicing law from the bench. Can't do that. So, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So just because you've been, and the reason why is because you're told the law in your heart. You're just not listening to it. Okay? So, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You still have to follow the law. No matter what your boss tells you, if he says, I'm going to fire you, whatever. If a cop says, I'm going to shoot you, if you don't do something, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go to my maker clean. He can shoot my ass. I'm not doing something unlawful or unrighteous or evil. I don't care if there's a gun in my face or not. And I'm certainly not going to do it for lucre or money or personal favor. So, everyone from here on out, because things are being revealed to us, and the Christians out there understand what I'm talking about, and even some non-Christians do. Things are starting to be revealed to us. And there's not much time. We're at a critical point in the evolution of this world because, again, we're one of only 2 nations that still have guns. Okay? Switzerland and us. Well, Switzerland is, the banking, they like to, all the bad people like to put all their money in accounts there. No one's willing to disclose who's keeping money there. I mean, you want to talk about the Panama Papers, go to Switzerland. It's full of, the Nazis still have money up in those accounts. And art. Spoils of war get stored in Switzerland. Okay? That's what they do. That's what their banks are for. They're an offshore country. So Switzerland and the United States, predominantly, are the 2 that have these volumes of guns. We're the last bastion of freedom in the world. And if the international bankers come in here and all you all do is don't exercise or learn the law and you don't get your county sheriffs under the Constitution and you don't start affecting your militias properly and organizing them in the county because they stole your National Guard under the governor's authority, and you don't start figuring out somehow how to have elections and having common law grand juries, guess what? The whole world's going to be consumed by fascism, and you haven't seen nothing yet once they get all the guns from us, which they never will. I'm not really worried about that. The point is I want you all to understand that what you think is the truth isn't the truth. You're being lied to your whole lives about who governs you, what their goals are, what they want from us. They want our children, they want our property, they want to be able to do whatever they want to do above the law. And they get these little house Negroes, in the words of Malcolm X, which is why they killed him, because he figured out it wasn't about race. It's not black and white. It's about evil people versus good people. It's about the haves and the have-nots. It's about getting your own, the slaves themselves to enslave themselves because their minds are so polluted with what is right and wrong. It's not hard. The man in the instrument of the seat of something, as an agent of state, he could be a cop. Okay, she could be a cop and listen to this and know now, oh dang, I'm not constitutional. Well, guess what? If you just start operating under the law of the Constitution, you make that instrument de jure. It doesn't matter how you got there. It's the soul of the man, the will of the woman, that determines whether something is in the law or not. So if you're a judge, or you're a senator, or you're a House of Representative guy, or you're a Child Protective Services person, and you see something done wrong against the Constitution, or unlawful, it's your obligation as a citizen. It is a duty as a citizen of this republic to not allow it to happen. To be a belligerent. You don't even have to wage war. Just say, I'm not going to do that. Stop complying with people that are violating your rights. Stop complying with people that are violating other people's rights. Stop violating the law. I don't care where you work or if you work. Stop violating the 3 tenets of the law. Do no harm. Stop violating the public peace and stop violating the public trust. 3 laws. That's simple. That's simple. So, what I would like to see from this video is for people to understand that what you think you're living under is not what you're living under. You want to get rid of judicial corruption? Get the common law grand juries going. Get your sheriffs in line. March up. Organize your militias. Make sure that if we are invaded, which it looks like they're going to try to, that you all can protect your land and your family from whoever invades. Because I have a feeling if they come to invade us, they're going to bring some friends that aren't even from here. You know, the United Nations, which, again, the United Nations is an unconstitutional entity. Our federal government had no more right to convey our sovereignty to some off-land, not even a part of this organized nation. They had no right to say that we give our rights and our Constitution over to some corporate body. We didn't vote for that. The United Nations is not a constitutional instrument. It didn't ask the people, hey, can we be your government? Did it? See, that's the beauty of a true law-abiding republic. And you all know, we're some of the most spiritual people in this world. And I'm going to tell you this, and then I'm going to end this, because I think I've taught you enough for the day, and your head's probably going to explode. This is the promised land. This land right here that I sit in, that I sit upon, that I'm made of. I am made of the promised land. I was born of the land Missouri. Okay? I was made of it. My mother made me from the dirt and the air of Missouri. I am an instrument of the land. I am a tree walking, my friends. I am Missouri walking. I am the Missouri Indians and all the spirituality of all the land and all the people that ever laid upon that land, like the tribe of Cain and Abel. You know how blood spills upon the land and the land remembers? Well, my body remembers. God gave me what I know to be right and wrong. This is the promised land. When they talk to you about the wars coming upon the promised land and the oppression of the people here, they're talking about us. There's nobody else to fight. The Palestinians over there, they got nothing. They don't even have water. It's a slow starvation occupation. It's an apartheid. You live in an apartheid too. You all are just too stupid to know it. You're being occupied by foreign bankers who are abrogating and subrogating a bankruptcy that's hundreds of years old. You've got no wealth. They've stolen your land. They're stealing your people to do God knows what them, but I can prove they're stealing them. We can prove that they're stealing them without probable cause. Your car is more protected from being taken and seized by the state than your child. Why would they want our kids? It's nefarious. It's sickening. It's gross. These are unclean, reprobate, evil people that are coming onto our land by unclean spirits of people who do not know better. My children suffer for what they do not know. So I am hopeful that with this little bit of information, you might learn a little bit so you'll stop suffering. Do not go out there and shoot each other, black and white, even poor and rich. We're all slaves in their minds. They don't care what color you are. They steal white babies just as much as they steal black babies, just as much as they steal brown babies. They steal land held by black men, white men, everybody alike. They don't care. You are being lured by baiting, by lies, propaganda, deceit, the devil, instruments of evil, reprobate, unclean spirits to bring war upon yourselves. They are not your enemy. They are a victim to the paradigm just like everybody else. So those cops that think they're doing right and don't understand why you're mad at them, have grace. Teach them the law. But you got to walk the walk. Can't go out there shooting people and capping people because you feel like it. You're just as unlawful as they are when they do it. You have just as much grant of law to do it as they do. So that's not going to solve anything. The only thing that's going to solve is what's, the motto of our nation. United we stand, divided we fall. Can I say it again? United we stand, divided we fall. United. We are the promised people, and we will protect the unalienable rights of all men, women, children, and beasts on this earth. If we fall prey to bigotry, hatred, fear, lack of knowledge, we will all perish, not just here, everywhere. There are people all over the world that are hurting because of what our dollar bill, which is fiat, has done to them, because our government is so cooed. We've been at a perpetual war for what is almost 200 years now, 106 years now. So they can be in martial law, because martial law is when you're at war. War on drugs, war on terror. How many wars are we in right now? If you count them all up. There's a reason why they keep declaring all those wars, because they can keep maintaining the War Powers Act as long as every 3 years they declare war on something. Now it's going to be, war on maybe patriots. That's pretty much what they're doing. So stop making war. Now, that's not to say if someone comes to your body and tries to steal a substantial right, an unalienable right from you, safety, security, the things that are listed in the Constitution. Because, see, when I stand on land, I control it, I don't own it. I control the land from the soles of my feet to the center of the earth. So if you're standing peacefully and someone comes with violences to take you, you have a right to self-defense. I'm not promoting anything. That's something that every man, woman, and child possibly will have to figure out for themselves. I personally am a pacifist until I absolutely have to do something about it, because I believe in the law. I believe that law will provide us remedy and relief. But we have to affect it in the fourth branch of government. And Anthony Scalia spoke about this, and I believe that's probably why he met an untimely death, because he understood and he exposed the fourth branch of government, that we have the unbridled right to common law grand juries and all of the powers that the fourth branch of government as a sovereign people. The people are sovereign too. The nations are sovereign. Ask yourself, how can a nation, or how can the states, which are nation states, how can the state of, Ohio, be sovereign in the Constitution when its only reason it's a state is because the people say it's a state? Now, if a state is sovereign, how does each and every one of you not achieve sovereignty? You have to have sovereignty to convey sovereignty. You can't, as a non-sovereign group of people, create a sovereign state. You got to think, man. So, you have a sovereign right to protect your unalienable rights, the substantial rights that your Creator gave you. And each and every one of you needs to have that in your mind, what you're going to be willing and not willing to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to exercise the law to the fullest extent as long as I can, because I believe in the law. And for me, St. John said in the first epistle of St. John that lawlessness is a sin, which tells me that the law was there before the sin. He doesn't say sin is lawlessness. He says lawlessness is a sin. The law is the law. The sin is the crime. So I'm going to be lawful as long as I can and exercise those things. But for those people out there that are operating on both sides or on all four sides, however many sides arguments there are, if you are operating outside the law and you think you're going to go out there and just shoot at an innocent person that has never personally harmed you or victimized you because he's wearing a badge, or if you think you have a badge and you're going to go out there and you're going to shoot someone because of the color of his skin or the lack thereof or whatever, because he's just not obeying you, because he talks too loud, whatever, that's a crime. Those are all crimes against humanity. So, my brothers and sisters, we are in dangerous times. You need to get your spirit right, and you need to understand who the real enemy is. We do not fight the flesh. We fight principalities. We fight principalities, not the flesh. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not even a Bible thumper. I wouldn't even classify myself as a Christian. Okay? I use the Bible in allegory to teach people who have a little bit of understanding of spirituality. We are not supposed to be fighting each other. We are fighting principalities. You need to understand who the principalities are. And they start with subterfuge and treason and seditious, evil, reprobate people that are in the systems of government that are intentionally have been plotting and trying to undermine this great republic that is the promised land since its inception. And I'm going to tell you that. Since its inception, they have been fighting this. So, I leave you today with that. If I have something else to say, I'll make another video, but I just can't keep silent any longer because you all seem to be searching for some truth, and it seems like very few people understand what it is. So I know that I don't know everything. In fact, I know that I know very little, and that every day I learn something new. But I hope what little I do know, that I can prove fact and law upon the record with instruments of record what I'm saying to you. Everything I'm saying to you, I can prove on the record. They are facts of law, either already standing on the law or that I can bring forth in public record from their records. Old instruments of the states. So I am bringing fact of law to you, and I'm telling you, this is not a conspiracy. This is fact. This is fact, what I'm telling you. So go out there, find your truth. Make sure it's the right one. Make sure that if whatever you're doing, you'll be able to stand before your God or creation and be able to know that you are doing righteous things. Because otherwise, if you're not with righteousness, you're against it. And that includes standing around watching unrighteous and unlawful behavior. So let's say you're not willing to defend your own rights. At least do something to defend other people's. Don't sit standing around while people get slaughtered. Fear is the worst thing we can have right now. Fear is the worst thing that can happen. And me, I'm not afraid. I know that everything is by design, and what will be, and how it will be how it ends, and how the creation meant it to be. But I mean, I'm going to sit around and watch it happen. God helps those that help themselves, remember? So, I gave you a whole bunch of law and a whole bunch of biblical references to help with the allegory of this. And I hope that you guys listen to this and find some peace and find some clarity that helps you move forward in these troubling times. But have no fear. Just like when Dorothy and them went through the Wizard of Oz and had to go through the dark forest, they found their way to Emerald City. We will find our way. Know that. We will find our way. There are a lot of wonderful, good people in this nation. The preponderance are very God-fearing, spiritually, let's put it that way. They're very spiritual beings that get along just fine and operate without the intervention of state, peacefully, no matter the religion, no matter the ethnicity, no matter the origins of our families and the cultures we come from. All the tribes get along here. Every tribe that comes here integrates with us, and we learn how to get along with each other, and the diversity makes us stronger. And we're going to use that diversity to set aside and put these demons back where they belong. Okay? Once and for all. Finally, once and for all, let's do this. Let's do this right. They've been coming at us for thousands of years. Let's put our spiritual minds together. And let's do right and make this world a better place for our children. Okay? I love you all. Godspeed. Peace be with you.